What is going on, everybody? How are we doing on this beautiful Sunday? John Middlekauff, a little go low pod. Still up here in Lake Tahoe. Just watched the last couple days of the Open. We have a new champion. He happens to be a second time major champion because about 2 months ago he won the PGA Championship. And Xander Schauffele dominates today. And we'll dive into that. Joins a pretty special group of players to win two majors in a season this century. Um, yeah, I mean, what a dominant performance by the X Man. I mean, he kicked everyone's ass today, so we'll dive into that. Scottie definitely didn't have it. Uh, I thought I want to dive into Saturday. I thought one of the more enjoyable couple hours of golf I've ever watched. In some of the comments from the top guys, I think kind of reiterated that. And then we'll just play the hits. I mean, we had Carnage on Thursday before I even got up here on West Coast time. Some guys were catapulted into the sun. Justin Rose, I call him Tracy Lawrence. I love it when a good chubby guy is in the mix. And at one point in time, we had Dan Brown and Lawrence both with huge bellies. Dan Brown just ripping heaters. He fell apart today, but Tristan Lawrence was pretty awesome. And we had a John Rahm sighting, so he's still alive. But before we dive in to the some thoughts on the 152nd Open, that's a long time. This tournament's been going for a while. If you want to go to an event like the Open, I saw today Patrick Mahomes rolled to his left, threw a beautiful like 50-yard touchdown. You want to go to a football game? College football isn't that far away. Obviously, baseball, if one of your teams still in the mix, you want to go to playoff games this fall. Can't recommend that enough. I've been to countless baseball playoff games, the NLCS I've been to, and the World Series. It's an elite sporting event. Concerts, comedy shows, my friends, my partners, and the official ticketing app of Gametime has you covered. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code John for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code JOHN for $20 off. Download the Gametime app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I never understand when someone gets really close a lot in golf and people go, he's never going to win it. When you are consistently in the top 5 and the top 10 and you're a younger player, things are eventually bound to break your way. And I say it all the time with Rory, who had an awful week, obviously. Like, if he keeps putting himself in position, he's going to win another major. But unlike Xander, like, he has a bunch. Like, if him and Spieth and Koepka and some of these guys never win again, it ultimately doesn't really matter to their resume because they already have 4 and 5, right? So when you have a lot of majors, it's less pressure in the sense that your legacy is already cemented as an all-time great champion. And then when you get into a spot like Xander and you have all these top tens and you don't have a major, people just start asking the questions. And then at Valhalla, he wins, and everyone says, well, that was really more like a PGA Tour tournament, right? People are going 18, 20 under. That's not your typical major championship, which, listen, I agree with that the horse played easier, but he shot 65 on Sunday. And he held off Bryson DeChambeau, who went on to win at Pinehurst, and Victor Hovland, who really, for the only time this season, looked incredible. But this week, there is no debating. He dominated. And the last 2 days, especially today, I mean, to shoot 65 was really a special performance by Xander. And now he has entrenched himself. There's a group since 2000. I think there's been 5 players to win multiple majors in a season. Eldrick, Tiger Woods, did it 4 times. Obviously, he's the GOAT. Koepka has done it. Rory has done it. Spieth has done it. And internet sensation, great Instagram follow, Potty Harrington did it as well. And Xander has joined that company. But here's the thing. Scottie Scheffler is continually compared to Tiger Woods, and rightfully so. He had 6 tournament wins. He won the Masters. He's had a remarkable season because of the purse sizes. He's already won close to $30 million. People talk about his caddy would be top 50 on the money list. When today ended, Xander Schauffele, without a doubt, has had a better season. Like last year in the NFL. Lamar Jackson won the MVP. Would anyone say that when the year ended, you'd rather be Lamar Jackson than Patrick Mahomes? Of course not. And Scottie Scheffler would trade his season this year for Xander in a heartbeat, in a New York minute. He wouldn't even flinch to hand all those wins away for a second major. And now here's the thing, like Scottie is viewed as this transcendent talent, rightfully so, the way he's played these last couple years. He's got two majors, and they just happen to be at the same place. Xander now is closer to the career Grand Slam than Scottie Scheffler. Think about that. Within 2 months, the guy went from 0 to 2, and now is two majors away. He plays exceptionally well at the U.S. Open. It is very likely if he maintains this level of play for the next couple of years, he could easily win that tournament. And he's also been really successful at Augusta. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that Xander ends his career, I mean, he's still a younger guy, with the career Grand Slam. Scottie Scheffler has to win all three of them. So listen, Scottie did not have it today. He was terrible putting on Saturday. Today, he was all over the map. I mean, he had a shot on 18 that looked like me or you. Classic, immediately grabs his back. And very disappointing because coming into today, I think Xander was favored at plus 350 on DraftKings, and Scottie was like plus 360, a couple shots back. And obviously, Scottie kind of derailed today, and Xander put the pedal to the metal and lapped the field. And really, the last 4 or 5 holes, the tournament was over. And now Xander has, I don't want to say one of the greatest ever because he's got a long way to go, but solidified himself as right there with Scottie as the best American player. And for the first time in, I didn't write down the number, in like 45, 50 years, the Americans swept the majors. Now, part of it is Xander won 2. Bryson obviously won the U.S. Open and Scottie won Augusta, which really kind of leads us, those guys, like Bryson should be at the Olympics with Scottie, Xander, and Morikawa. But regardless, like, it was hard to call Xander the best or the second best American over the last 5 years, despite his resume, despite him dominating, despite the money he was making, despite how consistently awesome he was in the majors. Not really debatable. And like I said, Scottie Scheffler would trade his season for Xander Schauffele's. Tells you all you need to know. So, like, the gap between those two guys, is there a big gap? Honestly, is there one? Because here's the thing with this live, the separation of some of the top guys on the other tour and the dilution of the PGA Tour, it's still impressive to win a golf tournament. I don't care if you're playing your member guest. I don't care if you're playing on the Korn Ferry Tour or a designated event with no cuts. So I'm not trying to take anything away from Scottie Scheffler and winning tournaments. That's the goal of everything when you're a professional golfer. But, like, what's the difference in the two guys? Honestly, you can give me like strokes gained. Like, I don't know. I watched the two in the biggest moments. I don't see much of a difference. And that's not trying to criticize Scottie at all. He's an elite player. So Xander. I view them basically, especially after today, kind of the same guy. And now that Xander's won a second major, I don't really know how you argue that. And I think the question is big picture, especially if Xander were to win a playoff event, despite not having as many wins this season, is Xander the player of the year? Because what's a major worth relative to a PGA tournament? Like, if we were just trying to put a number value on it, 5 wins, 8 wins, it's got to be worth at minimum 5x. So you could argue this second major victory. Now, Scottie could still win a couple tournaments and be the FedEx champion, but I think they're right there. And if you wanted to make Xander Schauffele your player of the year, I wouldn't argue. And I said it coming into this tournament, like, we can't compare Scottie to Tiger. Like, those comparisons died today. Honestly, they were dead. Like, he was never Tiger Woods, but he was having a Tiger-like season. The Tiger-like seasons, like I said, 4 times Tiger won multiple majors in a season. And Scottie was right there with like 27, 30, 15 holes to go. And he just didn't have his A game. And listen, it's golf. That happens sometime. But, like, those compare, we can't do that anymore. And I understand statistically you can throw some numbers up, but, like, you cannot have a conversation with a friend or BSing at a bar or on the golf course and bring those two names together. That can no longer happen. That's not a criticism of Tiger Woods. It's like comparing someone to Tom Brady or Joe Montana. You have to be in a very, very special category level of accomplishment to even garner the words to come out of someone's mouth. And it ended today, at least with this season. And I think moving forward, as long as this guy's going to play this well, you have to capitalize on these major championships. This is why when we throw out these over-unders, like how many majors is Scottie going to win? 6, 7? It's really hard. Now, he might end up winning Augusta like 4 or 5 times, but we've seen him got very close in the other majors, and he hasn't got it done. And today, Xander, I put it on overdrive, and Scottie had no shot. And ultimately, Xander, I don't want to say benefited, but the group of guys he was really fending off were Tristan Lawrence, which, unless you follow the DP Tour, no one's heard of. Justin Rose, who had to qualify to get in, who's one of the best players of the 2010s, but he's an older guy who has not played well lately. Shane Lowry was kind of, falling apart. Then he kind of stormed back, and then he fall apart. And Billy Horschel, who actually played pretty well today, but who's never, ever played well in a major, really beside, I think, like his first major in 2013, the U.S. Open. He has been pretty terrible in them. This was his first kind of, I don't know, opportunity to win one of his career, really. And he was good, but he wasn't Xander good. And he's not Xander good. So I think, listen, the world golf rankings, we know they're worthless now. I think when you look at it, though, I'm going to give Bryson and Rory a little bit of a pass this week, but I don't see how you can look at Xander any different than Scottie Scheffler as of July 21st, 2024.
Forget what the calendar says. Football season is right around the corner, and that means Best Ball Week at DraftKings isn't far behind. Here's what you need to know. DraftKings Best Ball Millionaire Contest is their biggest fantasy contest ever. We're talking 15 million guaranteed prize pool with that's right, 2 millionaires being crowned for the first and second place. If you're a set it and forget it type, I know I am, then Best Ball is for you. No waiver wires, no roster management, bigger rosters, so injuries will not ruin your season. Only the draft, and that's it. You're set for the year. Some of you might have heard I won $18,000 a couple weeks ago at the U.S. Open. It's an incredible high. But $15 million in prize pool, how do you beat that? Multiple millionaires crowned with winning this. I can't even imagine the high being in the mix. And like they said, no roster management. Injuries won't impact you because you got bigger rosters. Still not convinced? Check this out. This year, DraftKings is offering everyone a draft one, get one special. Your $20 entry fee scores you a bonus ticket. Get ready for Best Ball Week at DraftKings. Download the DraftKings app and use the code JOHN. That's code JOHN for all customers who enter the NFL Best Ball 15 Millionaire Contest to get a bonus ticket. Only during Best Ball Week, only on DraftKings.
I thought Saturday was one of my favorite days of watching golf of my adult life. It was one of those days on the couch where you go, I don't think you could pay me to be out on that course. It's freezing cold. The wind is pumping. Dustin Johnson said it was the hardest 9 holes he's ever played. Scottie Scheffler reiterated that. Justin Rose said he hadn't consistently hit the clubs he hit on that back 9, meaning long irons, 3 woods, into par 4s, since he was a junior golfer. And we just don't get that. Now, Scotland, the home of golf, which I was thinking about this. I have a ton of respect. Golf never would have been invented in America if someone tried to start it in like Seattle or some, Minnesota, in some place that it's raining, it's cold, it's freezing. Now, it doesn't snow like that, I think, in Scotland, but you know what I mean. Those people, since the beginning of the game, have played the sport, or the activity, some say, in inclement weather. And they embrace it, they enjoy it, and it's just part of their world. And you watch that and you go, and listen, I've never been over there. Every time I play golf with someone who's played there, they all say it's just a spectacular experience. It's one of those, especially older guys that get to take their children or guys that go on a golf trip. No one ever goes disappointed. But it's one thing to just go
play around at the old course, play at Troon, play, a couple of those courses, and then come home. It's another thing to live it and that be the conditions that you can consistently play in. I have a ton of respect for those guys. And that golf, and I know a lot of people, I saw Shane Bacon and a bunch of people always say this, and rightfully so, because when it's on TV, it really pops. Our golf does not look like that. But the number one reason they could never spend like a month and a half playing uh, that style of golf, basically just across the pond on the quote unquote PGA Tour, is because of television. CBS, NBC, all these networks pay a premium. And part of when you go over there, the time difference, they teed off this morning for me on West Coast time, the leaders, I think at 6:15 or 6:20. Like part of it in the US Open had enormous ratings is it's in that Sunday afternoon slot. Well, what's one of the highest rated television shows in America? Sunday afternoon television or football on CBS and Fox. That is the ideal window. Nothing gets better. And this tournament today ended at about 10:30 Pacific Standard Time. Think about football. The first set of games usually kick off, or not usually, that's when they do, at 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And then 2 or 3 times throughout the year, the England or Germany or whatever game kicks off at 6:30 a.m. So from the time window for the television networks, it would never work. But there is no argument. And you can't in this modern day society, you have to play everything live. You couldn't push it back and have it quote unquote tape delayed or whatever. So they're just kind of screwed with the window. It's really why they play. I mean, this tournament's been going on forever, but now that the Scottish Open has become uh, I would say a much more popular event. Clearly, they've put some more money into there, and a lot of guys go. And it was cool. I watched it last week, but same thing. It ends too early for the TV partners to ever agree to this for a month plus. It's just to me a non-starter. If you just know the way business works, even though from a viewing perspective, and I got up this morning, set my alarm for about 5:45, ended up getting out of bed at about 6:15. I looked, John Rahm's like 4 under after 7. I'm like, God, this thing's going to get interesting. He fell apart a little bit, but it's incredible viewing because those pot bunkers, we just have nothing like that. And the bunkers, over there, like I said, I've never been there. I've been to Bandon Dunes, which I can't compare, but somewhat similar in the sense of the way you can play the sport, keeping the ball on the ground, is there's nothing like having bunkers in the middle of a fairway or just barely off the fairway that are very in play where you hit your tee shot. And because of their ground, it's just much harder. We have to manipulate it so much. I see it at TPC, right? Like during the summer, even during the winter, the fairway's just normal. And then as they get it ready for the waste management, that fairway becomes like concrete. And that's what happens a lot on the PGA Tour. It's why whenever you see these distances and they say, God, how do these guys hit it 340, 350? Because on a lot of their tournaments, if you hit the fairway, it's rock hard and you get an astronomical amount of roll. So over there, it's just natural. They're not doing anything. It's the cool part about the courses is their greens aren't that fast. They're actually pretty slow because they have to do that to make it fair because at any moment, 20, 30 mile an hour winds, sideway rain, and freezing cold temperatures. I saw someone is like, I don't think we can comprehend how psychotic Billy Horschel is playing Saturday's round just in his collared shirt. He didn't even have a jacket. Xander didn't even have a rain jacket on. He just had like a sweater. I can't even imagine how cold their feet, how cold their bodies are. But from a television viewing experience, it was the shit. It was awesome. And this is, the pushback of Xander's first major in Valhalla is like, no one was ever going to blow up. No one was going to double. And at any moment, not as much today, clearly the conditions were much more benign. But on Saturday, you could blink and a guy could get a double. One bad shot would just destroy you because anyone that plays golf, if you've ever played into the wind, you put that little cut spin on it, all of a sudden it becomes a slice and it's in a bush. And if you said that was 5, 6 times a year, we could get that level of not even just the competition, but the weather, the course.
I can't say enough about Royal Troon. I know this. If I ever have the opportunity to go over there, I guess I would have the opportunity if I just chose to go. I would love to play that course. Now, the tees they were playing from, it felt like on Saturday, multiple par fours were playing 550 plus. Shane Lowry had a hole on Saturday where he went driver, and was still 30 yards short of the green. And that's what DJ kept saying. It's impossible for this course and any course to play any longer because the back nine, the way the course is set up, that's where the wind pumps into the wind. Felt like all those holes yesterday were into the wind. Where today it was a little more side wind. Clearly, you could tell the flags on top of the grandstands were blowing, but John Wood or Bones or whoever was down with the players, you say it doesn't feel like it's blowing that much. And those guys were a little less faced. That's why you saw a lot of 69s and 68s. And Xander, the best player in the field this week, shot 65 and was pumping drives 340, hitting 8 irons and 9 irons into greens, where yesterday he's hitting 3 irons, 3 woods. So it was just an extremely enjoyable experience. And I think overall, the majors this year have been awesome. Now, part of it has been the champions Scottie, Bryson, and Xander twice. Cream of the crop, the cream of the crop. The one thing cool about this tournament, more than the other three, definitely more than the PGA and Augusta, is you can get randoms. And I would say in those tournaments, if there's a random, it feels a little weird. In this tournament, it feels really cool. A guy with a huge belly that you've never heard of. Dan Brown yesterday on 18, when he was squarely in the mix, is just ripping heaters. He took a selfie before a second shot. He ends up doubling the hole. It's like you don't get those moments. And there's just like a purity, an intensity, a love that's like SEC football. That listen, I love golf. I play golf with a lot of people who love it. I'm sure many of you, if you're listening to this, love golf. Uh, but it doesn't feel like anyone loves it quite as much as over there. Like this country loves football. They really do. But it feels like the passion in the South is hard to match. It really does. I remember when I lived in Philly when I worked for the Eagles. I'm like, I'm from the Bay, and the 49ers are a massive, massive juggernaut for the league in terms of television ratings, in terms of success, in terms of just the eyeballs they get when they play. And they have a huge fan base. And I know people that love the 49ers. There was intensity in Philly that, I don't know, it just felt like different. And that's how it feels in the open with the fans, with the players. Uh, I saw a lot of people trying to rank the majors. Clearly, the PGA Championship is last in terms of just coolness and importance. We could have a long argument that this tournament is every bit the equal of Augusta. I'm an American. I would choose Augusta, but if you wanted to go Masters 1A, this 1B. And I think there's a lot of people that might put this 1A in the Masters 1B. And that, to me, that for Xander to win this thing, you saw his dad, who's obviously his longtime coach, not coaching him anymore, but feels like his best friend with the sunglasses on, just crying. And I think he knows. I think the tears at the PGA, where he finally got over the hump, finally got that monkey off his back, finally can call himself a major champion. This one like validated his greatness because that was impressive. Some other notables. The one thing cool about the Open and the U.S. Open is how you can open qualify in. They say one of the longest, they call it the longest day in golf, of the Monday going into U.S. Open week, where you play 36 holes. At most of these courses, you have to shoot, I would say, anywhere from 5 to 9 under. And the amount of like high level PGA players that are in them, it's always a cool day. And respect all the live guys who did it. Adam Scott did it this year to keep his major streak alive. The Open has that. And you can tell this tournament means a lot to Justin Rose. And for a guy who, if you think about the 2010s, Rory, Spieth, Koepka, DJ, he's right there. He really is. I mean, he was easily one of the best players of that era. He's older than those guys and feels like, I don't want to say closer to retirement or irrelevance on the PGA Tour, but he definitely hasn't been the dominant player these last couple of years that he was in his prime. And to see that guy, I mean, I thought he played his ass off. He was awesome, and to see the passion he had to open qualify to get into this tournament was really cool. And you just you could tell they were rooting for him and Shane Lowry just a little stronger. Uh, Obviously Shane more than Rose, but they've shown those dudes swimming with signs. It was fun to watch. I call him Tracy Lawrence after the country singer, but there was a moment at about the seventh, eighth, ninth hole where you're like, is this guy really going to win the Open Championship? I've never heard of him. Now, I'm not, I follow golf pretty closely, but I don't follow the DP Tour very closely. Uh, they were saying on the broadcast he's won 4 times. So clearly, this guy's not like some complete random, but he was 600 to 1. 600 to 1. And there was a moment, I think it might have been the eighth hole, he was plus 250. And for the most part, he was pretty freaking good. So he had a big belly, just hitting those power cuts. He was very, very enjoyable to watch. And that, like I said, the one tournament where I'm cool with, like, I've never heard of this guy and I don't even care, is this one. And it happens every single year. I heard a stat, speaking of Justin Rose, that of all the majors over the last like 25 years, this by far has the oldest average of winner, and definitely has the oldest average of guys that are consistently in contention. And I think that speaks to Justin Rose being in the mix because of the conditions, because of the difficulty. It just brings more guys into play. And because of the different ways you can play the course, it's not just hit it 340, pull out your pitching wedge, knock it within 10 feet, and try to make a birdie putt. That's not really what this tournament is at all. And then depending on where some of your shitty shots go, can you make magic happen? Uh, when I woke up on Thursday morning, Bryson DeChambeau and Rory McIlroy had both shot like a combined 150, which I didn't have any because I was in California. It doesn't allow me to bet, and then you go to Nevada, I can't bet on DraftKings. I'm not quite sure on the rules, but did not expect that, so I couldn't even get my bets in when I wanted to. I wouldn't have bet on Rory, but I was one of those people that expected him to contend. I thought he would play well, and he didn't just not play well. He was, as he said, he was thinking about vacation with 20 plus holes to go. Like, kind of an embarrassing showing. When this whole tournament was kind of about guts, was about grittiness, was about battling your ass off, he's like, yeah, see ya. I'm out to wherever the hell super rich people go vacation. And Bryson, unlike, Rory has played well in the Open many of times. Bryson does not. And we said this coming in to this tournament is like, you take out 2 years ago at the Open when he finished in, I think he was T8. He had not cracked the top 30 in any of his, his times across the pond. And this week he didn't even make the cut. You have to wonder, for a guy who's very scientific, for a guy who like measures his balls and salt, who I guess on Monday and Tuesday, because it wasn't raining, but it was supposed to rain, he had dudes with a spray gun. I remember Chip Kelly did something similar when they were playing. They played like the Dolphins or the Bucks, and then stayed in Miami for the week to go play the Bears, and it was supposed to be awful weather. And they were like spraying the footballs with water, and then they went to Chicago and it was snowing, got their ass kicked. It's kind of how it feels, because you can't manipulate this type of stuff. You kind of got to be an artist. And Bryson has slowly turned a little bit more into that because his short game's so good, but he kind of does what he does. He plays these big rope draws. He plays one ball flight, and this tournament kind of punks him. Now, ultimately, who cares? Maybe when Bryson's career is all said and done, he's always shitty over there. It's kind of irrelevant because his style of golf, especially now that he's cracked the Masters a little bit, translates literally every other tournament. So he'll struggle over here, and as long as he plays well, he has a chance to win. I mean, he only plays in 3 tournaments with everyone else, but whenever this thing merges back, it's going to work. So, like, maybe he's just going to eventually punt on this, and maybe he gets a year where benign conditions, no rain, no wind, and he can compete. But to me, if the weather's coming the way you have to play over there, it's just really not going to work for him. Uh, it was nice to have a John Rahm sighting. It really was. And he's a guy who's dominated in the majors. And because of his athlete's foot, the going to live, it's just been a disastrous season. I mean, a fucking disastrous season for John Rahm. Not his bank account, but for on the golf course. And like I said, when I got up, he was 4 under after 7 holes. And you went, could he post like a 64, 65 and post a number and be right in the mix? Now he bogeyed some holes in the back and made a nice par save actually on 18, but it was just cool to see him in the top 10. And hopefully this next year, we got a lot of horses playing really well. And who knows if this merger or if anything ever is figured out between Live and the PGA Tour. But the hype, behind the Masters, which is obviously a long, long way ago, and that's what sucks, is like the golf moving forward is completely irrelevant. It just doesn't matter. These playoff events, no one cares. No one cares who's the FedEx champion and gets to make, $20 million or whatever it is. And no one watches Live. So basically, President's Cup is during football season. And that's just nowhere near as cool as the Ryder Cup. Today kind of marks the end for professional golf relevancy. I watch, but I'm what you call in the business of P1 and pay attention. Most people don't. And I'm already starting to see highlights of Lamar Jackson gets sent home because he's sick. Patrick Mahomes making throws. The more and more training camp gets going, the more golf falls into the background. And this was kind of their last big moment. And I think what needs to happen moving forward, and I know Tiger's a big part of this, is they got to get this thing figured out. And they got to put their egos aside. This is less about pride and who got paid. And like the only way for your sport to sustain beside these four tournaments, is to figure out a way to play together in some form or fashion. And I don't have much faith that they're going to get it right. I don't have much faith that it's going to be enjoyable for us. But if you can just get all the same guys on the same golf course, get John Rahm, DeChambeau, back with Scottie, back with Xander, back with Rory, the sport has a chance. Because right now, they just don't. Beside these four tournaments, which are four Super Bowls. What I tell my fiance, I said, four Super Bowls. She's like, well, what are all the other tournaments? I'm just tournaments we watch. But these are the ones that matter. And congrats to Xander for winning that bad boy. And yeah, one thing I want to do really quick, I got a couple go low questions at go low pod. At go low pod is the Instagram. Fire in those DMs and we will answer them here. Question for the pod. With Xander winning 2 of 4 majors and some big money prizes coming up in the playoffs, is there a chance that we talk about Xander as having had the best season instead of Scottie? I think if Xander wins one of these playoff events, I don't even think it's debatable. Because like I said, if you just did the math, that a major is worth, Scottie would trade all of his PGA tournament victories this year beside Augusta, which is not a PGA Tour tournament, to win the Open. He would trade him. And he wouldn't even he would do it in the blink of an eye. He wouldn't even flinch. So if Xander wins one more time, I don't even see how we argue that. All we've been talking about since Live happened was the importance of the majors, the competitions, the fields. And now Xander wins the Open, and Scottie was, for his standards, relatively bad. So I think Xander is probably one playoff victory away from being the player of the year. Shows you, the margin for error out here. Now, Scottie still might win the FedEx, but unless they've changed it, right? I hate the way they do it, but I understand it. Is Scottie's going to start the FedEx Championship at East Lake at 10 under? Well, Xander's going to start at 8. It's not like Xander's 10 back. He's 2 shots back. So if Scottie bogeys the second hole on Thursday and Xander birdies, all of a sudden it's like 1 shot back. It's not a very big difference. I think Xander actually has a pretty good shot to win the FedEx. And if he wins the FedEx, then it wouldn't even be arguable. But even if Scottie wins it and Xander loses to him by a shot, I'd have no problem giving it to Xander. Curious to know why the Ryder Cup and the President's Cup
aren't played at the end of August before football starts. I feel like August is always up for talking always up for the taking, and golf and baseball just can't seem to figure this out. As a casual golf fan who always watches the majors, I struggle to watch way less of the cups when they coincide with football. I've been saying this with baseball forever. Like, shorten your season, capitalize on an opening, especially now that the preseason games suck. But that's never going to happen. They're never shortening the season. Neither is the NBA. They're never doing it because the gate in those sports is so important. The problem for golf, which I totally agree with, is in a couple of weeks they start their playoffs, which ultimately, who cares? It's basically just a way to distribute money to their top players. The events just don't matter. And this is someone who loves watching professional golf. The events do not matter. They simply do not. If you could argue just have one playoff event, just cut it to like top 50 guys, play the first or second week in August, and then have the President's Cup and the Ryder Cup in the last week in August. But like I said about my faith and however it plays out with the merger and getting everyone together, that's never going to happen. So I don't ever expect that to change, at least for the foreseeable future. Maybe now with the President's Cup, which is owned by the PGA Tour, you have some of these big money people. Some of them are NFL owners. Maybe they try to push for that. I guess it's hard to feel any of these things are set in concrete with the ability to just change moving forward. But every time something changes, it feels like it's either the status quo or it's for the worse. I mean, they're always changing stuff to try to basically get their players more money, and we all lose. Now, those events aren't really for the money. Xander and Cantlay don't love that, but that's another discussion for another day. Um, I don't know. I wish that happened because, like you, I mean, football rules the day. Football is how I pay my bills. So I just, it's really, really difficult, but don't count on it. Don't count on it. So congrats to Xander, second major, and has vaulted himself as, I don't know, I mean, 1B in American golf right now.